that's table stakes for a DAO. There is a community around it. There is an unseizable bank account, and then implied in that is some sort of method for that community to decide how that bank account is governed. To me, a DAO is simply an internet community with an unseizable bank account. So if you can kind of like check those two boxes or three boxes, depending on how you want to parse that sentence, that's to me that's table stakes for a DAO, right? There is a community around it. There is an unseizable bank account. And then implied in that is some sort of method for that community to decide how that bank account is governed. I think if you go further back, especially talk about the Larimer concept, or if you look at how, because Vitalik Buterin was the first guy to say the word DAO in any context. And he's talked about what his inspirations for the idea was from the Daniel Suarez novel called Damon. And so in that situation, a DAO or what the inspiration for the concept of DAOs was simply an unseizable bank account that was governed by a bot, right? So or some sort of AI character. The common architectures that you see today really kind of fall under, I would say, 3.5 different type of architectures. The first category being simple M of N wallets, right? That whenever the number of stakeholders or community members grow past what is feasible to govern via simple M of N polling, they will graduate to something like snapshot voting. So snapshot.org, where they essentially are like, it's like any type of nonprofit or high school club that you were involved in, Lions Club, Rotary Club. They've got some rules written down on how they're going to govern themselves, and nothing but the polling itself is governed on chain, right? Which allows for the pseudonymous nature of DAOs to kind of be represented there. But it still requires significant human involvement and implementation. And so the one thing that's kind of like an asterisk on that category is the fact that Gnosis Safe, which is the M of N wallet that most people in the Ethereum ecosystem use, has a thing called the Zodiac Suite, which is a great set of tooling that starts to bridge the gap, because there is a point in which you may grow from an M of N into snapshot voting. There's like a middle ground in where you've got a certain number of users or a certain amount in the treasury where it becomes a huge liability to rely on loose, non-blockchain enforced governance. In my opinion, that should only ever be a halfway house on the way to something more strict and on-chain. I've seen DAOs that have lingered too long in the snapshot voting realm that end up getting rugged or attempted rugs or conflicts or dissolution of the DAO because there isn't clearly defined rules that are enforced on chain. And I've been involved in some of those battles as well. Like I had to fight those battles hand to hand, not just in a theoretical concept or in like I've seen it happen type concept. Second category I would say is anything that follows the pattern of the DAO, which was that kind of archetypical DAO that was created on Ethereum, the first major DAO on the Ethereum network. The reason why they tend to follow that form very closely is because some of the most popular no-code DAO tooling that exists is something called Moloch DAO. And Moloch DAO is the right architecture for the majority of DAOs, in my opinion, although it is certainly not perfect. Essentially, the way it works, but it is good if you're coming out of this like M of N snapshot, converting yourself over to kind of a more formalized DAO for a larger community or a larger treasury. You've got two classes of tokens in a Moloch DAO. You've got the loot tokens, treasury tokens, and then you've got the governance tokens. And there's a bunch of switches you can flip on both of those tokens. You can make them soulbound or you can make them tradable in both cases. And the key difference that you can't change between both of those classes of tokens is that only people who have the governance tokens can vote on proposals and can vote on proposals. You can have it where they are required to own them to submit, or you can have it open and you can adjust that fee that you were talking about in Dash, the anti-spam fee or whatever. The loot tokens are not without recourse, though. What ownership of a loot token designates is ownership, proportional ownership or pro rata ownership of whatever's in the DAO treasury. If the folks with the governance tokens ratify a proposal that alienates too large a percentage of the loot token holders, there is a rage quit mode, which prevents rugs and other things, because and then there's usually a configurable threshold in a Moloch DAO of if enough people rage quit, it will revert the proposal, the ratified proposal to the pre-proposal state. And there's usually kind of a grace period for that to happen in. But if that threshold isn't met, after the grace period is over, people who have rage quit get a pro rata portion of what's in the treasury, and their tokens are, basically sent back, and taken out of circulation.
Basically burned.
Right. The third category, and it's, I would say the most nascent one, is the one I mentioned earlier, the Nouns DAO category. It is distinct enough to deserve its own category because it is, it's not the only DAO architecture that uses NFTs for governance, but it is a very specific form. The way it tends to work, and there's a lot of little caveats and details on how these votes will work, but essentially it is a recurring auction, of generative art NFTs. You define how that generative art looks, and then there's a one that happens either every 15 minutes or every minute or every hour, every day, once a week, once a month, whatever that number is. All proceeds from that auction go into the treasury. The owner of that NFT now has pro rata governance voice as well as ownership of the treasury. So they don't have that two token system that Moloch DAOs have, which might be considered by some to be a step backward in terms of governance, but it is unique and it is interesting in terms of creating a self-replenishing fund for whatever it is that you're trying to do. It's not the right solution for everything, but it is a solution for a lot of things. Hey, thanks for watching The Merge. We've got a ton more stuff for you to watch on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere. Check us out.